Welcome everyone to our next session in the summit today. This is the space science panel. Fantastic to follow the astronaut straight away. It precedes the educator panel. We've got a fantastic group of scientists and science communicators with us here today. Really looking forward to diving in with each of them. We've got Martina Dimoska, who's newly installed as a program human systems integrator at NASA Johnson Space Center. We've got Sarah Treadwell, science communicator and research scientist, and Vivian White, director of education at the Astro Society. And Vivian, I'm so glad this worked out because we tried to have you on a panel years ago with the Space Prize Foundation. So I was telling Ron this morning, it's fantastic to have this come to fruition today.
Great to be
Um,
here. Mm.
and we're trying something new this time around where we've got just one slide for each of you to just very briefly introduce yourselves. So we got a little bit of a visual backdrop, and then we'll pop out of the slide deck and have our talking heads for the panel. But I think we've got the next slides in this order. So I'll just give you each about a minute to introduce yourselves. So Martina, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Martina. I'm so thrilled to be here. Amazing panelists and an amazing program. Thank you so much. I come from a country called Macedonia in the Balkan region. That's a region in Europe. Tiny country, but with no space industry, no space anything. We don't have a space agency. We don't even have a space observatory. We don't have a pathway for space. So I kind of had to find mine. So I became really extensively space educated. I became the first Balkan female analog astronaut. And now, not only that I founded something called International Space Alliance, the first space non-for-profit of that kind back home, and also in the Bay Area of California, I recently became a program human systems integrator at NASA Johnson's, and I moved to Houston. So that's kind of like the overview.
So yeah, I'll give you guys an opportunity in a minute to share a little bit more. We've got some great questions, but that's perfect. Thank you. I think we've got Sarah up next.
Yeah, I had the same problem. Like, how do I fit all of what I do on one slide and do it in a minute? So I'm Sarah. I go by Space K Sarah. My primary interest as a science communicator is in astrobiology. And I've also done analog astronaut experiences. I've also got to travel the world doing lots of different programs. But the most notable and career shifting thing for me was sailing on an ocean expedition. So when we were talking about geology, I was kind of rooting in the background, which was a core drilling research ship that went to the Lost City hydrothermal field, which is one of the most interesting places for research for astrobiology, especially for future missions like Clipper and other icy moons. And in a weird twist after that, I got involved with a group called Open Space, which is funded by NASA Scope, and I give portable planetarium shows to kids all around the country, connecting ocean research to space research.
I mean, I love seeing those pictures. And Vivian, let's throw it over to you for a quick intro too.
Thank you so much for having me here. I have what I think is the best job in the whole wide world. I work at the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, or the Astro Society as we're calling it these days, and I get to run a NASA program for amateur astronomers. This is about 400 amateur astronomy clubs across the country called the Night Sky Network, and many of you I know are in these amateur astronomy clubs. Are the folks here? Are any of you amateur astronomers? Do you consider yourselves? Are you in your local club? Yes, I know. Space Case Sarah is. It's so good to be on a panel with you. It's so actually I started this over 20 years ago, and Ron and I were in a program called Project Astro together. We were volunteers in classrooms at the ASP together, and we went into classrooms to partner with teachers and inspire kids about space. So I started as a volunteer and then just loved it so much that I ended up working here a couple of decades now. I also get to travel all over the world, and that is some of the joy of my job. And sounds like there's lots of time to talk about all the adventures.
Yeah, and I'm again thrilled that all of you are here spending your morning with us and sharing your expertise with us. I'm going to stop sharing these slides so that we can see everyone well during our discussion. So I've got you guys pinned here along with Ron and Gitika, my co-hosts. And I'm going to throw my favorite opening question your way, and then we'll kick it over to Ron and to Gitika and open it up to everybody for an open Q&A toward the end of the session. But if you were here for the first session when we talked to the astronauts, I like to ask people, using a space metaphor, what's the trajectory that brought you here? What brings you to a space education event in 2026? So an opportunity to tell a little bit more of your story, but particularly anything that might have or anyone, a mentor, a teacher, who might have provided you a gravity assist and changed your course along the way. So it is, after all, a space education summit. We're all lifelong learners, but focusing on things that educators of all kinds. And Vivian and Ron, you might not be classroom educators, but I know you guys are educators, and Sarah for sure, and Martina as well. So if you guys can share a little bit of the trajectory that brought you to this space education event, and perhaps to extend the metaphor, someone that gave you a gravity assist along the way. So anybody want to kick it off for us?
Sure. Let me
Martina,
go first.
Yeah.
So, my reason of why I kind of like ended up in space is something I call the ultimate pursuit of truth. So, as a really curious mind since a young age, I always questioned a lot of things. So I felt like once I grasped the mathematics and chemistry, there was always like something next and next and next, and then that ultimately got me into space because we have so many unanswered questions. So just that human hunger of curiosity kind of like led me to this vastness of unknown to grasp and to learn and to explore, right? Um, in all honesty, back home, we don't really enthusiasm for space in that sense or mentorship. People don't think it's really possible. So kind of like my first jump in the industry when it comes to space education was Andrew Aldrin. He was running a program at Florida Tech called Commercial Space Studies, and he saw all of my work in a lot of NASA open data, open access, open knowledge programs like citizen science and such. And he thought that I can deepen that. So he was the pivotal moment of giving me that head start and incorporating me to furthering my education. So I'm an educator because I didn't have that as a kid, and I wanted to give that back to a lot of people. And even Gitika, she actually came to my hometown this past year. So we had the summit there, and she could see that there is a demand in kids' eyes, but we just don't have the infrastructure. So that's why I also do educating and outreach, so I can give the path that I didn't have to people.
Oh man, what a great answer! And I put it in the chat, but I love that the curiosity about science is what brought you to space. A lot of times we hear the story being the other way around, and so cool that Andy Aldrin was a gravity assist for you. You couldn't ask for a better one. Sarah or Vivian? Sarah, it looks like you unmuted.
Sure. I mean, I have a kind of a similar origin point, a little bit different than Martina, but my background, and this is something I would kind of shy away from in the past, but then once I started embracing and sharing the story, I found that it really inspires a lot of people. I was not raised in a science literate home whatsoever. I was raised young Earth creationist, so the Earth was only 6,000 years old, and dinosaurs were probably not real. And it wasn't until I was actually a mom, I really didn't care much until I stumbled on an episode of Cosmos, and it was the Neil deGrasse Tyson reboot. But I saw that, and I saw that cosmic calendar in the first episode, and I was like, what? Like, what else don't I know? And I just became obsessed to learn and catch up as much as I could on space science. And I had this sort of idea in my head, like, man, in another life, I would have gone into science. Like, this is what I would have done. And it took a really scary car accident for me to realize, actually, no, this is my only life. So I made the decision the next day I didn't care what it would take to pursue astrobiology. And I have gotten very, very lucky multiple times now in this, but also I think it's a huge part of my success is my passion and my wanting to share with other people, because I remember what it was like not to know anything. So I don't get tired of needing to explain things in a very simple way, which I think makes me a really good science communicator.
I am so glad you share that story. Yeah.
What is totally amazing is that we all three have similar stories. That's incredible that we all ended up here sharing science because I will say I grew up in the South and consider myself the black sheep of a very artistic hippie family who they're all into astrology and I think it's fabulous and an interesting thing and honestly also got me into astronomy when I started thinking differently about it and trying to learn more. So that's just fascinating. You don't meet that many people who come at it from that direction. Very cool.
So Vivian, you're literally saying that astrology led you to astronomy and you started looking at the stars in a different way.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting question, and a lot of people have a connection in that way to the stars. They can tell you where Jupiter is, which constellation Jupiter is in right now, which is so exciting that they do watch the sky in that way. And then when you start asking questions, it just brings up more and more excitement about actually what's going on. And I think when you start talking to people about that, I find astrology a really great introduction into astronomy. I think it's how we started to understand the stars. And it is for me, it was a beginning into further curiosity about what was going on up there. And the more I learned, the more excited I got about sharing it because I think it can just enrich what people are already dreaming about.
What a great perspective. And for what it's worth, in our final panel today too, we have Dr. Jason Batt, a mythologist, coming to talk about people's relationship with the stars going back thousands of years and how those stories are important to us even today. I mean, look at how we name our missions, right?
Absolutely.
And planets for that matter. Awesome. Well, Ron, I know you and Vivian have worked together for a long time, and I know you have some questions for the panel. So let me throw it over to you, and then Gitika, and then we'll open it up to the participants.
Yeah. Well, for all three of you, really, just it seems like there's a never-ending curiosity about astronomy and space travel, and it feels to me like we're on the cusp of like a whole new wave of things. People took a fair amount of interest in the International Space Station, but now, they're with four companies building commercial space stations, Vast, Blue Origin, Voyager, one other, um, and people going back to the moon for the first time. It seems like, and hopefully Virgin Galactic starting up another round of suborbital flights. They think they could fly 200 or 300 people into space next year. And so far, there's been 780 or so. So, we could be doubling, the people that have seen Earth from this, even just a suborbital perspective, in the next few years. So, do you have any thoughts about how to like expand that, or if like how are you seeing like the next 5, 10 years play out as far as education? Seems like it's evolved in classrooms too. Uh, any thoughts on what's ahead?
I've been really excited about all of the people who've approached me about Artemis now. I mean, it's really inspiring a whole new generation. There wasn't, a lot of people did not know much about it going into it. And then it happened and everybody knew about it. And I just love to see the general excitement about space travel again. I think it's going to inspire a whole new generation.
Yeah, I to kind of chime in on that too. Artemis, yeah, I saw really got people excited. And one of the, like, again, I mentioned I accidentally turned into a planetarium person. Never saw that coming. But as a science communicator and, have done stuff with astronomy and, presentations in schools, there is something so unique about this tool as a medium of immersive technology. I think that I've seen profound reactions, even more than like looking at the moon through a telescope, because I think it's giving people this immersive three-dimensional way of looking at data. And that's the beautiful thing about open space that I work with. It's funded by NASA. And so they're putting, real NASA data into the program. So like I had a kid in the dome just recently. There's a data set in there that shows all of the mapped exoplanets and then all of the potential candidates. And when I showed him that, he whips his head around. He's like, I want to work for NASA someday. And like, that's just such a cool moment that I don't know how else you can give that, because it's just so overwhelming when you see it in there. You're like, whoa. And I think that's just a cool like technology that is just going to get better and better as the years go on.
I really want to see a lot of space being a mandatory lesson, a lot of curriculums about space, mandatory lessons in academia on any level. So I'm a huge advocate for that on a national level, anywhere for every nation. What I like when I try to immerse people into more complex technologies, though, is their level of finding their gap of understanding. So they have this cool thing that somehow connected with them. It resonated, whether that was the humanity of Artemis 2 or the future that everybody is now aspiring to, or the new era of space exploration now that we're entering. And they can like look back and find exactly the gaps that they miss to help them understand this. So again, huge advocate for having a more robust curriculum that's going to tie STEM and space together, and it's going to prep everybody and give a chance to everybody for this novel ecosystem we're developing.
Good question. I imagine there's some overlap. But Ron, Gittica's in the middle of a lab, speaking of space science. Oh, Gittica, are you able to pipe in?
Yeah, I was just pipetting, so we're right on brand with the space science topic. But I've been listening in, and it's so inspiring to see, all of you what you're doing. And I'm also interested in space biology, so love the work. And I actually went to Macedonia last year with Martina to do an outreach event. So it was, a very special moment to see how many students were excited about space and were just looking for an opportunity to enter. But a question that I two questions. The first one is, what is a big misconception of your field or something that you're having trouble with in terms of narrating, or something you're struggling with right now in your field that you wish more people in the industry and outside of the industry knew? Because I think astrobiology is very important, but I don't see as much like focus on it, or even just like space sciences. I think it's a very novel field and it's growing, but I'm sure there's challenges. So what is a misconception or current challenge you have that you wish the industry and people outside of the industry would know of?
Since I work mostly in human spaceflight currently, the biggest misconception is first, why do we need spaceflight or exploring the universe when we have so many problems here back home? Which obviously, when you explore things outside of Earth, you monitor Earth. It's to protect you, to better understand, and preserve humanity, at least in my eyes and in the eyes of many scientists that make these missions. And second huge misconception is, why do we go to the moon? Was the moon landing staged? And people think of Apollo, the first landing, they think of one mission solely. They don't understand necessarily the mission architecture, or how many boots on the ground were there in Apollo era. So just communicating that, and then just asking questions to see where that gap is, so you can perhaps fill it if they're open to a new perspective. That's kind of like the information that they're lacking. Those two are kind of like the biggest gaps that I constantly have questions about.
I think for me, and sorry, Vivian, if you want to talk first, the connecting ocean research with space research is huge. Like, people just think that Earth is Earth, space is out there. How are these connected when we are literally a part of space? And so understanding our extreme places here for astrobiology is so important for like the Clipper mission. And so that's kind of an easy connection I can make now with the dome. I would say just a weird niche thing that I have with especially a portable, not a horrible, a portable planetarium, is that planetariums already seem to be childish to a lot of adults. Like, a lot of grownups are like, oh, that's for the kids, right? And then add in this bubble, this inflatable bubble, which kids are like, is that a bouncy house? I intentionally try to set up events for adults only, because I'm trying really hard to change that narrative that, planetariums are just for kids, museums are just for kids. There's so much research that is the general consensus that, these institutions are for children, when it's like, no, this is complex, cool science. And, you want to get to those. I mean, I hate to bring it down to money too, but you want to reach those voting constituents who understand the value of space exploration.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think piggybacking on what both of you said, just I get a lot right now. There's a lot of competing needs happening for everyone right now. And people say, why are we spending money on going to space? Why are we doing this? And the idea is that so much money is going into NASA when it's really like a fraction of a percent that goes to space. And this is part of our shared humanity in a lot of ways. And I'm excited that we get to spend money on aspirational things. I think when we talk to people about why we do it, I think part of our mission is to inspire them to get excited about that. And Artemis is doing a pretty incredible job, but also all of the technologies that come out of space exploration, like even just the greenhouse gas effect that we learn so much about from studying Venus, like studying other planets helps us understand our own planet so much better. Yeah, so I think tying it into what is important to people in the everyday is pretty important. Um,
I just have to
Amazing.
comment. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, I also see some disconnect even within the scientists, within the sciences, because when you do astrobiology, it's so interdisciplinary. But like when I was contracted to sail on that ocean core drilling research ship, we were the first expedition sailing knowing that the NSF had prematurely pulled the funding and was going to retire the ship early, and there's no replacement ship. Like right now, the United States does not have a core drilling ship. And because I'm Space Case Sarah, all these geologists were like, why does NASA get all this money and we don't even get to have a ship anymore, and like holding me personally responsible for NASA's budget. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, and so I sometimes I think even within the sciences, they're so focused on their science that they don't see that broader picture of how all of us are building on the shoulders of each other to understand our place in this universe.
I definitely echo what all of you said. And it got me thinking, which kind of like it changed my second question that I was going to ask because I want to open it up to everyone. But what is the space to Earth vertical that you all are most excited about in your field? Because I think sometimes, I think it's easier for some fields to be like, hey, this technology can be used on Earth, here are the applications. I guess with astrobiology, what would that space to Earth message be that you would want everyone to know? And anyone can kick us off. I don't know. It's a tougher question. So
I think
Go
it's
ahead, sorry.
it is complicated. There are some people who don't think that, how did we get here and are we alone? Some people are not going to be on board. I guess that this is my background also reflecting into this of being very cognizant of like, not everyone's going to understand why. Why should we be pursuing those questions? And I'm okay with that. Like at some point, you're not going to compromise people and their beliefs if it's too much embedded in them. But for me, I'm just trying to remember your question correctly. But for me, it's man, like the discovery of hydrothermal vents, like the fact that like we could find life that exists and thrives not on sunlight. Like, how can you not think that's not the coolest thing and the potential that it would open up out there? That's just me. So that's my gospel of, knocking on the door and saying, excuse me, have you heard about the phosphine and the clouds of Venus? But that's just me. I don't know what other answers will be.
There's really cool websites like NASA Home that actually show you how you're using everyday things that are made from space exploration. And that goes from like the Teflon in the pants to the memory foam in your shoe soles to the pillowcases to broader sensing, remote sensing, and seeing how Earth behaves for our well-being to more innovations as we go, like medicine and developing that field a bit more. So everything really excites me about the future of space exploration because I know that when we explore, when we innovate, when we try to understand. We just have more answers, and then the whole humanity can rely and improve its existence because of them.
I think
Oh,
that
go ahead, Vivian. Yeah.
I was just going to add one more thing to that that's a little bit more outside. When I talk to folks about the idea of finding life on other planets, the thing that really fascinates me is this going to be life like us? Are we going to have similar origins? And either way, the implications are so astounding. Like I hope that in my lifetime we discover some sort of bacteria somewhere on a different planet. And are those bacteria going to be like us or different? And the implication of if they are like us, the chances that there's this panspermia, that life is spreading planet to planet, that we came from the same place, like that's incredible. And if it's not like us, I don't know if that's more incredible or not, but that means life formed separately in two different places. Like those the both possibilities are so astounding to me that I don't even care which one it is. I'm just so excited to find out.
Yeah, I can see the passion literally jumping through the screen as you all talk about this. So that's awesome. Yeah, those are all the questions that I had. I think we can open it up, Mark, maybe.
Yeah, I want to interject one before we do open it up. And Martina, I mentioned I wanted to at least ask about this. We have a panel at the end of the day that is looking at space stories, and I think it's only about 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago now, that this volume came out from the European Astrobiology Institute. Speaking of astrobiology, but it paired short science fiction stories on one hand with science essays, related science essays on the other hand. And Martina wrote one of the science essays, which is how the book came to my attention. And I thought I would at least ask, and we could throw it to all three of you as well for the panel, like, what is, how do you see the relationship between space stories and space science, since this is the space science panel?
I love them, and thank you for the shout out for the book. It's a really lovely book where you can pair sci-fi and then see what's possible and where the science, how long have we come for in science. So I'm a huge advocate for space shows because I grew up watching Star Wars and Star Trek. And now we see that so many innovations in space were an inspiration because of stories. Storytelling is an essential human trait. We all learned like that when we didn't have anything written, when we couldn't store things. So it's still a really powerful tool to excite people. So I always say, if we want the space sector to thrive, we have to reach in those untapped communities and share the story of why this is interesting, incredible. Why do we, support it? Why we're in it? Where's our passion? Just because, like that, the more interest we have, the more hunger we create in students, and those students look for jobs, and then those companies lobby for more budget. So it's like a full circle moment of just one story having a huge impact to the point of perhaps new budgets and jobs. So that's how I see it.
Awesome, thank you. How about Sarah or Vivian? Anything to add to that when it comes to space stories and space science?
I was going to say the storytelling, I'm finishing up a PhD, and my basis of my PhD is on Walter Fisher's narrative paradigm. So he advocated that, advocate's not the right word, but that humans really only learn through storytelling, that is the primary way that we learn, as opposed to just information, spit at you. And so then I use that as the basis for my planetarium dome shows, because you're not just getting a scripted thing, you're like living my expedition with me. And I'm building it on this narrative of follow the water and our discovery of water in different places. So that's sort of this story that I built into the planetarium show that I have.
Oh,
So
that's
very
a
much
great perspective. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Vivian, how about you?
Yeah, I think we just learned so much. It's our human history through storytelling, just like Sarah was saying, and I think that one-on-one storytelling can be so powerful. I work with a lot of amateur astronomers, so if you are not already in your amateur astronomy club, go find them, because having someone to actually take you through and show you the sky and tell you their personal story and connection to the sky really is, it makes such a difference for so many people. So many people can say, I started to do astronomy because I looked through a telescope and saw Saturn for the first time, and there was some context of someone there to help explain what they were looking at or to talk them through their many questions that came after that. And I think having that personal storytelling experience can just really inspire folks. In the same way, there was a note in the chat about so many people don't know that ISS is passing over pretty regularly. And when you end up somewhere with a dark sky and you can see all of the things that we have out there already in the sky, and you know, we always wave at the ISS as they pass over. They cannot see us, but it's just so inspiring to know that there is a human connection there. I just read the book Orbital, which I would absolutely recommend. It is not it is I guess science fiction, but it is very much based in science. If anyone has read it, it is beautiful and poetic, and it's about orbiting. Yeah. Oh God, really touched me. Seriously, I would recommend. That's all.
It is technically a novel, I think, but
Yeah.
it's more of a meditation, right? It's really fun. It's a fictional, space station crew looking down on Earth, and it's spectacular. Yeah,
It's like a love poem to Earth.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, it felt like that.
Yeah. The author captures the experience of being in space in such a beautiful way, and very different from astronaut accounts of people who are actually there. I mean, she is really in the relationship of seeing the Earth like that. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah, what is that line? They should have sent a poet. You
Yes.
know, I think they sent her. She's
Well,
great.
Mike Collins had a great quote from Apollo 11 in his book Carrying the Fire. It's like, yes, they should have sent philosophers, poets, artists, but they would have killed themselves trying to fly the spaceship.
All right, we've got a couple of hands up for the open questions. And Aziz, I saw yours earlier if you want to jump back in there. But Martina, if you want to jump in with the first question for Martina and Vivian and Sarah.
Yeah, I would start with Martina, but it's actually a question for all. I know that you have a new exciting position at Johnson Space Center in Houston. I would love to learn more. How did you end up at your current position and what you do day to day? And same for the other panelists. I know that some of them like already like Sarah and Vivian like highlighted like a little bit how they ended up, but if you could collaborate like exactly how you ended up at your positions and what you do day to day.
Yeah, my path is not traditional in a sense, just because when you are coming from a country that doesn't have a national space agency, you don't have a pathway. They cannot connect you with ESA. We're not a part of the ESA member states. We don't have a connection to NASA. It's always easier when you have an infrastructure to relay you somewhere. So I had to. First, for every job in the space sector, it's not like when you're applying to a tech position, right? Just because there's ITAR and regulations and national security, everything is tied to that. So I had to first see the ecosystem, which meant study to a few different countries and see where I want to belong. So if that's the US or maybe France or Germany, so CNES and DLR, their respective space agencies, and only after that figure out to which country I want to apply for residency for and find that pathway. Because for every country, if I wanted to work there as a Macedonian, I couldn't. I needed at least a residency/citizenship. So that was kind of like my process. And also the interest was always for me tied with a lot of human performance, with a lot of pushing boundaries and limits, both for the science and the body and the mind. So my current position is Program Human Systems Integrator, which means I'm a discipline integrator for something called EHP or AHP, which stands for human health and performance, and we deal with a lot of we deal with all of the missions essentially. So we are caring about how astronauts interact with all of the systems. So we need a deep knowledge and we need deep interactions to everything the astronauts see, are in, touch, experience, so they're safe and it's optimized for them. So that naturally is a workload where you have to know so many things, which is great because I have an extensive space education, right? So you have to know how they would be, let's say how they would perform in a spacesuit, in a rover, in a vehicle, and then know all of the subsystems there. Like what do they need? What does the system mean? What does this rocket look like? So it's just a lot of information that you have to go through and also represent those NASA standards that we have for safety and security and performance and health.
I'm going to give you a really short answer. Unchecked confidence and faking it till I made it. Like I'm dead. That is how I got here. I just started like, I'm just going to apply for that. And so the reason I got on the ship, Sian Proctor, who flew with Inspiration 4, also served as a communicator on the ship. And she put out a tweet saying, oh, they're putting out a call for these communicators. And it didn't make any sense on paper to go out to the ocean based on my science. You know, now I know better, but at that time I was like, ocean, but that'd be kind of cool. So I threw out that application and it was one of the most stressful waits I've ever had in my entire life because those are 2 month long expeditions. And so that was just like, you know, you get to the point where you're just like, yes or no, just yes or no. I don't care. I don't even care anymore. Just take me out of my misery. So, but I mean, honestly, when I got that ship placement, I was like, do they know that I'm not really supposed to be here? Truly, that's how it felt. I mean, now I have a lot more confidence and not so much imposter syndrome, but a lot of it was just, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really common when we're doing things that not many people do. I waited a lot of tables on my way here. That was my path. I did not have a traditional path. I didn't go directly from high school to college. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do. I think I would have probably been an archaeologist had I gone directly out of high school. I don't know that I would have chosen space, but I'm so glad that I did. And I got a degree in physics um, and and realized that I just love talking to people about it. Like that is what makes me want to get out of bed in the morning. So, yeah, I just kept doing it and I volunteered and volunteered until I got a job. And then before you know it, you're the director of education. I mean, before you know it, 20 years later, but it does happen.
Also just to kind of like fill in, Martina also had a follow-up question about monetization. When it comes to financial aspects, I come from a really by standards, a country with a really low GDP, we don't earn a lot. So if you Google Macedonian salary monthly, you'll see the vast difference. It took a lot of scholarships and applications for scholarships. It took a lot of saving and putting that saving into training versus other things. And so other normal things that are expected for a woman in Macedonia were delayed for me vastly. Like, I don't know, forming a family early on, because we do that earlier than other cultures. So much of my earning was just reinvested into a future that I might not ever have. So it was an insane bet on myself. So that's how I tackled financials, and as well as a lot of overworking, a lot of volunteering, a lot of two two side two side jobs on top of my studies, anything I could get my hands on to go through the process to get here. So it was never easy. I was super exhausted. That meant um so many of my well-off colleagues that could afford that because they had a scholarship from their national space agency, or because the space industry caters to a wealthier clientele of students, I would say, of people who are well off, they can afford to be in this industry and have those trainings, they could network better. But I think through that exhaustion, people could see my tenacity. So I think that was kind of like the plus. So never easy, but here we are.
Yeah. But I meant not just like the purchasing power parity across countries, but also like the phenomenon that may be more exacerbated by space industry, which is like over volunteering. People who have money basically expect to underpay people or have them work for free, utilizing on the fact that everybody is like super excited about space. So how have you overcame that?
I volunteered on top of that. So I catered to that shot. But I agree, it's a problem in the industry, and we're advocating for it not to be.
And then I want to give some time to get squeeze another question in. And I think Aziz actually had his hand up earlier,
Yes.
and I know him from coursework at the Kepler Space Institute. So I want to give him a chance to ask his question, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and let's see if we could get through all the questions and maybe go to more of our lightning round.
That's true. And we do have till 10
Yeah,
after the hour because
yeah, 15 minutes would be great.
Aziz, take it away if you like.
Okay, thank you. This is great. What Sarah you said about the planetarium, I think is very important. Planetarium is a star theater. And for example, one of the things that made space and all of that accessible to the masses was the building of a lot of planetariums in Europe, especially in Germany and the States. So this is it's like a book, okay? And the good thing is that when you are in a planetarium, like when you are in an analog mission, okay, the other case is going to be 724, okay, but here you are, like you said, storytelling, and this is how we learn. We can grasp the stars. We can not touch them because they are far away, but this is how you interact with an average human. And it's not only for children. Actually, when we are in a planetarium, we are all children. And that's a good thing because children are curious. Okay, so it ignites that curiosity inside us. So I just wanted to say that. And what you said is very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like we can get some other questions, and then it looks like Shad is next, if I've got that right. Shad Ahmad.
Hello. I just want to say thank you for sharing your personal experiences as well. I've actually gone back to uni to do physics, and when I was 18, I was homeless, so I never had the chance. So hearing about your personal experiences has actually been really inspiring. What I wanted to ask was, what are you guys excited about in terms of the near future that's expected to come out from research? And also, um, like, how did you guys handle networking, especially with the fact that you guys had some disadvantages compared to like wealthier people when you was trying to enter the space sector?
It's a really good question.
Oh, go ahead, Vivian. Sorry.
I would just say that those disadvantages, the overworking and the having to volunteer a lot and not having the time, honestly, are also in different ways can be seen as advantages. You know, having to work this hard and having to fight your way to the top or to get what you want actually gives you a whole lot of grit that people around you might not have, who are already there, who didn't have to work quite as hard. I think I like to think of it as an advantage, even though it was difficult, even though it's been tricky. I believe it's given me different skills than most people have in the sciences. Start there.
And I think I second that. I couldn't go to all of the fancy dinners just because maybe I didn't have the ticket or the fancy conferences, right? So I feel like everything that I volunteered for was just grit, and I was never really paid for that or compensated to the point that I also had to cover my own travel expenses and everything like that. So I think that leadership, though, saw my volunteering capability, and I could always look them as a reference because they were like, oh my God, look at this girl coming from nowhere, doing all of this for years and never really asking about anything in return, yet she always has this passion. So in my case, I was really lucky that leadership could see that and advocate on my behalf for other things or point me on the right direction. Just because, for example, for the NASA Space Apps Challenge, I always do that free of charge, and I always rely on cumbersome amounts of hours that I put into the space apps. And because it was not paid, yet it was so demanding, nobody from the US for certain positions applied for that. but I did. So I ended up being the first international who can have a NASA SpaceX agreement and stuff like that, and build that relationship, although it was more challenging for me. But that is not the most sustainable way though. I just choose it to see it as a pro, and as something that really helped me out to deepen my knowledge, because I see programs like that, and I look at them as a free opportunity to learn through learning, through doing, learn through doing. So that's kind of like how I tackled it.
I just wanted to say congratulations on going back to school and pulling yourself out of that living situation. And I really do think that I can empathize a little bit with being that non-traditional student. And so just I want to encourage you to not get frustrated sometimes when you see your peers where it just seems so easy for them. And just remember, you've lived a totally different experience, and what you've done is incredible and admirable. So since they covered a lot of your second question, what I am most excited about coming up, and I joke about this with my show all the time, is my ship expedition. We core drilled near this very important hydrothermal vent. We pulled up the most mantle rock ever recovered on planet Earth ever. It was really epic. And we took a lot of fluid samples, and we're also looking at how far down we find life. And that is going to be directly informative to the Clipper mission when it gets to Europa, to guide some parameters of what are the extreme limits of life, and are we finding conditions there within those limits that would warrant a follow-up mission. And my joke is that I have like 4 years still. I have 4 years that I still get to like hype this up in a dome, and then who knows, Clipper might get there and we'll be like, well, nothing there. But at least for the next 4 years, I got a great story I get to share.
Schrodinger's core samples. We don't know.
And I can't, I mean, it's not like secret, but like we were published in Science once for the core, for the core, that much mantle rock, but now the biology is getting published soon because it's very interesting.
I can't wait. And just given the last 4 years or so, I feel like those 4 years are going to fly by. It's going to be very exciting.
I keep my job.
We're going to go over to Minerva then for our next question. And if you have additional questions, raise your hand.
Chad, did you have a follow-up?
Oh,
He was just reaching. He was just.
Oh no, I just wanted to say that with regards to the Clipper mission, I actually put mine and my girlfriend's name on the message of the bottle as a Valentine's gift.
The message in the bottle. Love it. Yep,
Yeah.
mine too. Nice. So we're all going to Clipper.
Love that connection. So we'll go to Minerva, and then once again invite anybody else to drop questions in the chat or raise your hand. We'd love to get to you too. We've got a few minutes left, but go ahead, Minerva.
Hi, thank you. I am very glad to be here. And I am Minerva. I am also a science communicator. And as a scientist and researchers, how do you balance academic rigor with creative storytelling? And how do you feel being a communicator, has improved the way you do science? Or have you faced some challenges being taken seriously by scientific community?
So it used to be communicators, it was seen as the bed, like having space to bring communicators along these expeditions to sail, like was not something that they did until very recent times, because that space was too important to have for a scientist. But then they started to realize, like we're asking so much of the scientists to try to share the science and do the science while out at sea. So they started bringing these communicators on board, but there was still even some pushback for us to be there when we sailed, that it just was this idea is that the science is more important than the communication of it.
I feel like there's a section for everything. So when you do outreach, you have to understand that you're doing it for the masses, and you have to make it clear to the audience that you're explaining this for your niece and nephew that are really young, or your grandma that's 85 and doesn't understand or didn't have the appropriate education back in the day. So when you frame those things, they do have to be simple, just because of the formatting today, and then what videos and the algorithms require, and just the constant feeding of those algorithms. But there's a way of showing your academic rigor in papers, in conferences, in presentations where you can excel. So it's good to tie those two together and bring some really cool information and know how to explain it simply, but then it's obviously really different outlets of how you convey one versus the other. So a good approach, if you, let's say, have a really an academic audience that you want to cater to, but also a social audiences, and they in different cultures they can clash, right? If some cultures ask you to only do one and not the other because you're considered less professional or less whatever, um, it's good to loop those things in. It's good to like be like, okay, but this is if you want more, this is the paper. So that is kind of like my hack when I have to cater to, let's say, the Balkan audiences.
Yeah, I don't do much hard science right now, but I will say I think when talking to people, even in this format, it's really so nice that all three of us got to present some of who we are as a full person. Like you don't see that happen that often in the sciences, and it's starting to happen more and more. And I really love that shift for the sciences, just so that people actually it does actually make an impact on the kind of science you're doing and the questions that you ask. And I think it's an important piece to carry with us as we do hard science.
Yeah, being able to bring your whole self to to your work makes you a better teammate too, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's something they look for now in astronauts, right? They do actually care a lot about the whole picture, not just what kind of science you're doing or can you fly the plane. Those are important, obviously, but there's lots of people who can do that. That full human. It's a really important one.
It reminds me of I've been drinking out of this morning with the Space Kind program and Loretta Whiteside's book, The New Right Stuff. It's not really the skills that are needed today are not being the stoic, self-reliant person so much as being someone who's, got your stuff together so that you can speak up and communicate well and work well as a team.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was definitely what they audited us for interviewing to, live on a ship for 2 months with other people where you cannot get off. It was a huge thing that they were looking for. So I actually kind of found it funny that the things on my resume, they were like, oh, this. And I was like, that has nothing to do with my skill set, but they were super interested in just kind of the whole of the person.
Martina, I'm interested in your perspective on that, given your analog experience.
Regarding
Oh, sorry, just in terms
the
of
book with Loretta or
bringing the whole person to the team
oh,
when you're isolated
I
together.
see.
Yeah.
Well, it's I feel like I've went through a lot of refinement when it comes to bringing the full person. And I feel like for certain skills, you do have to compartmentalize of the delivery, right? Some analogs require you to be go, 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 and you cannot really have the time to be creative on a whim. So I feel like I've learned how to compartmentalize and I connect that with a lot of industry folk or how they work. So there's I feel like again a time and a space of where to bring your vastness, and that can be through different channels, at least for me. Some one person at a conference, or just more creative perhaps, or more bold, or more talkative. But when I'm in an analog, I'm really mission oriented. I think you saw that in Artemis 2 astronauts, how they convey themselves in the mission and then how they behave in interviews as well. They, I think, also know how to compartmentalize and put the risk of the mission in one place, put the deliverables in the other, put the outreach afterwards. So I feel like that's who I am. And it doesn't mean that I don't develop several sides at the same time. I really actively try to do, but I still, compartmentalize. I feel like for me, there's so much that I try to like narrow it down to, okay, what does this environment need from me to do this? But I do agree that you have to be a well-rounded and a wholesome person to know that what you're offering is really high quality in your core. And then the real good stuff, the new book from Loretta kind of like I think touches on that as well.
I love it. What I'm hearing from all of you over the course of the hour is kind of meeting your audience where they're at. And Martina was, I don't know the phrase you just used, but I think Katie Coleman calls it operational mindset. It's not all about you, but you are critical to the mission, right? And the mission comes first. And we see astronauts, of course, doing that, and scientists who are in remote locations have a similar experience. But you look at Katie or any of the other astronauts, they all have that other side too, that artistic side. How many astronauts have, played an instrument or painted in space as it is? So I'm glad we're able to touch on that too. And again, the humanities in space and storytelling. We have about 10 minutes. No, this is actually the end. We have 10 minutes until our next panel. So we do need to wrap up. But I want to thank all of our participants for your questions. I'm happy we were able to get through everybody that raised their hand. And thank you to our panelists, Vivian and Sarah and Martina. Just fantastic to have you guys here. It seems like we could also have talked to you all day, but having an hour together is really special. And thank you all for making time, even on your lunch break with the new role at Johnson, Martina. Thank you for all of this and joining us here and allowing us to record it. I'm thrilled that Ron and Gitika and I get to share this after. And I'm cool that Gitika is asking questions while she's in a lab at Columbia University. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording there, and I'll put up the slide for the next panel.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks very much, y'all. Great to
Thank
see
you so much. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, be well, be in touch.